So let us look at these team roles little in detail and try to understand what exactly they are trying to do. First of all, let us look at the product owner. Now, product owner, as the name suggests, is basically the person who basically owns the final outcome of the project. So he is basically, in the simpler terms, you can say that he is the representative of the people or the stakeholders who are funding it, who are interested in getting it, or even further simpler terms, we can call them, he is basically or she is basically the representative of the customer. So product owner is basically represent the interest of everyone in the stake in the project, but principally the customer's interest, who is going to be deliver the outcome or the result of the whole Scrum or the project. Now this product owner comes out with all the requirements, like in case of normal transaction, the customer basically spells out what he or she exactly wants, and then the supplier will try to develop and deliver those things. So in this case, being a representative of the customer, product owner basically comes out with the project's initial overall requirements, and keeping in mind the return on investment or the objectives of the project, he also makes a release plan. We will talk about that a little further down. So product owner is basically playing the role who is going to give the requirement to the team, who is going to tell what all is required to be done, and in what sequence he needs it. The list of requirement is called product backlog. So what the product owner is basically doing, he's listing out all the requirements, and this list is called product backlog. Now this product backlog actually has a special characteristic, and that is that the product backlog ensures that most valuable functionality or most valuable requirement is put at the serial number 1 or at the top of the list. So basically what the product owner is doing, he is listing out the requirements in the order of their importance, in the order of their valuability, in order of priority, whatever you can say. In doing this, the responsibility of the product owners are that he or she works on a shared vision with the stakeholders, basically, because he is representing all the stakeholders. He's coming out with the requirement which all the stakeholders have in mind, which they have thought out. And so he gathers the requirements from all of them. He manages and prioritizes the product backlog. Actually, this prioritizing is now being revised as ordered, because priority could be misleading at times. So the new nomenclature for this characteristic of product backlog is ordered list of the requirements. And because he is the one or she is the one who is coming out with this requirement, he or she also has the responsibility of eventually accepting that delivery at the end of each iteration. We'll talk about this iteration further. Actually, iteration is, in case of Scrum, we call these iterations as sprints. And the product owner also manages the release plan. Now, what happens that in product backlog, it will be a long list of requirements. It could be very long also. So product owner basically prioritizes that list or orders that list into chunks of requirements which get delivered one after the other. So depending on the value, depending on their interdependence, depending on their priority, he prepares a release plan that, okay, so many these requirements will come in the first release, these requirements will come in the second release, third release, like that. And he ensures that the profitability of the project is there, because he is representing the all the stakeholders. So his first and foremost duty is that to ensure that the stakeholders get benefited out of it. Okay, so that is about the product owners, and then we talk about the team. Now, team is basically number of participants who come together to work, make the commitment, and make delivery on that commitment. This team is responsible, has the collective responsibility for the success of each iteration and of the whole project overall. This team is basically because this team, the success of the team depends on the team spirit. As I mentioned earlier, there are certain things which are required from this team. They have to have trust among themselves. They have to have commitment, share the commitment with each other. So this team size is also very important. The team, typically it is recommended that the team size could be 6 to 9, 5 to 7 or something like that, because if the team size becomes too big, it becomes difficult to make them work in a united manner. More the number of people, more diversity of thought and action would be there, and there will be less chances of their being very cohesive and committed together. So that is the team size typically recommended. These teams are, as also mentioned earlier in the earlier slide, are supposed to be self-managing, self-organizing, cross-functional, and responsible for figuring out how the work is to be done. Now, cross-functional factor is very important for these teams, because ideally these teams should be self-sufficient for completing the task, because in case they are not self-sufficient and they depend too much on the external help or support or inputs, it will be very difficult for them to make commitment. It will be very difficult for them to meet that commitment. So the effort is always made to make this team to the extent possible self-sufficient, so that they do not need much help from other people. The other important factor is that the team, within the team, the members are not identified by their role, task, or anything. It is expected, it is supposed that the team will work as a single unit, and so internally they could swap their roles, they could help each other, they could take up each other's tasks. So externally they behave as a single unit. The responsibility of the team and team members are estimating size of backlog items, actually, because now the moment they commit on any of the backlog item, they'll have to estimate the size of it, estimate that what all, detail out the tasks that are required to be done for completing that. And for that, on that basis, then they commit on the increment of deliverable software, that is what is going to be done in any of the iterations, any of the sprints. They also have to track their own progress to ensure that they are able to meet the commitment, and they have to be self-managed but accountable to product owner, because they are making the commitment to the product owner. So they have to be accountable to the product owner. Now these teams, as I said, I mean, ideally size being around 7 people in that, they would have different kind of roles. They would have different people with different background, different expertise and all. So it is thought that it would be good if they could be given somebody who could help them stay together, help them keep sync amongst themselves and all. And this person is called the Scrum Master. Now, Scrum Master is responsible for the whole process to be followed. He teaches or he evangelizes the practices required for Scrum in the team. He ensures that the team implements the Scrum practices, and those practices are in line with whatever organization's culture or organization's practices are there, and ensure that the team delivers the expected benefit out of it. So this person has a kind of patron kind of role for the team. He keeps an eye on everybody's activity. He brings them together, ensures that the team remains cohesive. Ensures the team is making the right kind of progress at right pace, and things like that. Interestingly, it must be noted here that the Scrum Master is not part of the team. Part of the team in the sense that the Scrum Master is not part of the team's commitment. Scrum Master is not making commitment. Team makes the commitment. So Scrum Master provides all inputs, all guidance, all support to the team so that they make the right kind of commitment and they are able to meet that commitment. The responsibilities of the Scrum Master role are that it empowers and shepherds the team. Shepherding the team in the sense that she also ensures that the team doesn't get distracted from its target. Any of the team member is not pulled out of the team in between. The team is not disturbed in between because of any of the external factors and things like that. Scrum Master is also there to remove the impediments. In case team comes across any impediment, the Scrum Master tries to help and remove that impediment so that the team can make the progress. Keeping the progress moving, that is also a Scrum Master's responsibility to ensure that team is making right kind of progress at right pace from day-to-day basis during any of the iterations. And Scrum Master basically institutionalizes the Scrum practices in the larger organization. So if I sum up the role of a Scrum Master in brief, we can say that a Scrum Master is a friend, philosopher, and guide for a team. Please note that Scrum Master is not playing the role of project manager or manager of the team. The Scrum Master doesn't have any authority on the team. Scrum Master is just helping them. The Scrum Master is there to provide them support. Scrum Master is there to help the team meet the commitment in whatever way possible. Okay? So now let us come back to the product backlog, how the team is going to, this team starts working. So first thing that team comes across is the product backlog. A project starts with a vision of the system to be developed. This vision is given by the product owner. So basically product owner will come up with the idea that, okay, this is what is required. It could be one of the stakeholders' requirement. It could be joint requirement of the stakeholders. Say, for example, in case of a product development company, it could be management's decision that, okay, we need to develop this kind of product or this kind of extension to the product. So he or she comes up with that vision, and then the product owner enhances that vision, works out the detail by discussing with all the stakeholders, collecting their views, ideas in the form of requirements, and formulates a plan for that, okay, how these requirements would be delivered, which is in software what known as release plan, how many releases will be there in each release, with all requirements will be delivered, and lists all of them out, all of those requirements out as a product backlog. So the product backlog is a list of requirements that will deliver the vision. It is prioritized so that the item most likely to generate value are on the top, as I mentioned earlier also. And prioritized or ordered product backlog is the starting point for the release, making the release plan, which is, and the changes in this product backlog, because as the teams start delivering the requirements from the top towards bottom, this product backlog will keep on changing, and that change in product backlog will indicate that how fast or how slowly the team is able to deliver, whether the release plans are going to be in time, whether all releases will be in time, whether the schedule will be met, and things like that. So once the product backlog is there, that actually the product owner presents that product backlog, prioritized product backlog, to that sprint team. And by the way, these requirements in the product backlog are also known as stories. So product owner comes up with a list of stories, most important, most value generating story being on the top, and he presents that list of stories, prioritized list of stories, and team starts looking at that list from top to bottom. And team tries to decide that in a given iteration or in a given time box, how many of these stories can be delivered. And mind you that these stories have to be picked up in the same order. It is not possible that teams start picking something from the top, something from the middle, and something from the bottom. No, that is not allowed. Team has to start picking from the top sequentially and see to it that how many stories they can deliver in the next iteration. Now these iteration, or as I said, we call them sprints, are typically 2 to 4 weeks long. The minimum time that a sprint should be, ideally it should not be less than 2 weeks, and it should also not be very long, because longer the sprint, lesser the visibility into the work progress is there. So ideally the sprint size is recommended for 2 to 4 weeks time. So what the team is doing, team is trying to look at the backlog, understand that backlog by discussing with the product owner, and once they understand those stories, they estimate that how much time this story will take, and depending on that time and effort estimation, they decide that okay, next sprint how many stories they can commit. And that's how the team commits to the product owner that how much of whatever is desired can be delivered over the next sprint. Now this sprint planning meeting cannot last very long, it has to be quick. It is also time boxed. In fact, every activity in Scrum is time boxed. So you decide, say for example, you are deciding that this is the sprint length. Total sprint is maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So in case it is 2 week long sprint, you can't spend 2 or 3 days on just deciding that what the stories to commit for. So proportionate to that time, the team has to decide, make a decision and estimate the time and effort required to do that. Based on that commitment, team now develops the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is akin to product backlog, but it is talking here, we are talking only about what is required to be done during that sprint. So this sprint backlog, sprint planning has basically 2 parts in which the sprint backlog is generated. In the first part, it looks at, as I said earlier, it looks at the prioritized list of the product backlog stories and commits about the stories that they would be delivering. Now this commitment incidentally is for something which is shippable, which is complete in itself, which can be delivered to the customer. Not something which has been developed or which requires further testing, for the integration and things like that. Sorry, I was just looking at some of the questions that have come in between. So I think I'll elaborate on those questions towards the end once let me finish, because some of them I've already passed through. One of the questions which has been repeated by a number of people, it says that can we say Scrum Master is like a line manager in a standard process? No, that is not so. As I made it clear while discussing about the Scrum Master's responsibility, role and responsibility. I said he doesn't have any authority over the team. So he's not a manager. I specifically mentioned that he's not a manager. He's friend, philosopher, and guide. He's there to facilitate team's work. He's there to remove the impediments, but he cannot order, he cannot direct, he cannot manage the team, because team has to be self-managing. Team has to decide for itself what exactly they want to do and how they want to deliver it. So we will talk about some other activities as we progress about this sprint discussion. So as I said, basically once the commitment has been made about the stories, then the team has to decide or to detail out the tasks involved, tasks required to be performed to make that delivery happen. And for that purpose, they again have to break down those stories into finite tasks and again estimate that what each task, what kind of time and effort will be required for each task. And again, this estimation has to be done very fast. I mean, one of the techniques that is recommended for these kind of estimations, whether it is for the product backlog commitment or for the sprint planning, is the planning poker. Typically, numbers from Fibonacci series are taken, and based on that, gross estimation is done. And that estimation is defined by consensus of each of the team members, and then on that basis, the team proceeds further. So, team details out all the tasks, and based on that they create the sprint backlog that these are the tasks that needs to be done during the sprint so that they are able to finish and deliver that commitment. The sprint, as I said, is time box, and the sprint, by the way, sprint time box starts right from the moment team sits with the product owner and starts deciding, making the commitment. Okay, so again, depending on the time length of the sprint and kind of commitment being made and the stories being discussed, team has to keep in mind that how big this time box should be for creating a sprint backlog. Once the sprint backlog is created, okay, another question has come that how is cost factored in, since in the previous slide you had mentioned the actually cost factor is look at it from a different perspective. The product owner is supposed to be ensuring the return on the investment, as I mentioned earlier. So product owner has already decided that how many releases in what time frame the whole delivery is expected, and based on that he creates the release plan. This release plan of course does get modified, and that we'll see as we go forward, because I have to introduce other concepts for doing that. So this release plan basically dictates that, okay, whether the sprint or the delivery is being made in the given time frame, which implies that within the specified cost limits. Okay, so let us look at the sprint further, that how the sprint is working. So is the time of the sprint, once it is created, then this is team commits to starts working on this, and then team can seek outside advice, help, information, whatever is required to fulfill that, because Scrum Master is there to help them. But ideally, as I said initially, that teams are supposed to be self-sufficient, so they start on that. The tasks are allocated to different people, or actually not allocated, because again it is a cooperative kind of effort, because there is no manager, there is nobody who is going to assign. So team members pick up the tasks that are detailed out and volunteer for that and start acting on that. And in this tasks pickup or task allocation, again, I mean, it is not necessary that somebody's background or knowledge or experience, of course he takes care, but nobody is going to tell that, okay, you are so and so, so why don't you do this or that. So it is all voluntary basis. Team, as I said, it works as a single entity, and so everybody tries to do his or her best, and so they pick up all the tasks and ensure that they get delivered within the given time. So now these tasks will have the interdependencies. That means the team will have to keep in touch, everybody informing the team about the progress that any individual is making. So this kind of activity is monitored by or facilitated by the Scrum Master, and this is how the team progresses. We'll talk about it in little more detail, but before that, there could be situations where the team finds that the commitment made has been, later on they find that the commitment has been too much and perhaps it cannot be met, or it is also possible that because of certain lack of specialization or knowledge or information beforehand, team has made the commitment, but eventually they find that they cannot really fulfill that commitment. So in either of the situation, they have to get back to the product owner, and with the discussion, with consensus with the product owner, they can resize the commitment. They can say that, okay, out of these 5 stories committed, perhaps only 4 can be delivered in this, and 5th story will have to wait for some time for whatever reason. The Scrum Master can also terminate the sprint in case he finds that the team is not able to meet the commitment. So instead of wasting time, instead of procrastinating over the whole issue and things like that, the Scrum Master can suggest that the team, and they can terminate the sprint and start a new sprint all over again. So these are the provisions that can be worked upon, and team members during this sprint, they have the moral responsibility or administrative responsibility I mentioned here, is that they have to attend the daily Scrum meeting and keep the sprint backlog updated. Now, what is it that they are supposed to do? I have tried to explain it through this picture. On the left-hand side, you see that the sprint backlog is listed where the product backlog is listed out of which sprint backlog is created of the part of the product backlog, and that is detailed out into number of tasks. And then here it is showing that the 30 days sprint is there. So in that 30-day sprint, actually, team is supposed to do a daily Scrum meeting, which is shown on the top as 24 hours. So this daily Scrum meeting is actually a daily stand-up meeting. I'll tell you about that, what exactly is supposed to be done there. And then at the end of 30 days, the team delivers the potentially shippable product requirement. Now, what is this daily Scrum all about? Daily Scrum is the important ritual of Scrum, the important activity of the Scrum, which, as I said earlier, because different people are doing different tasks, nobody is really assigning them, everybody is picking it up independently. So the daily Scrum helps in keeping the team in sync. There are certain guidelines here which are mentioned here that ideally this should be conducted at the beginning of the day, and so that the team member can think of what exactly they have to do during the day. The team members, this meeting is supposed to be very, very short, and to keep it short and sweet, each team member is actually supposed to answer only for 3 questions. Number 1, what has been done since last stand-up, that means in last day, and what will be done next now, and is there any impediment, is there any problem, is there any obstacle being faced by the team member. So just by answering these 3 questions, basically what is happening that each team member is informing others that this such and such task has been completed, this is the next task I am going to take up, so that if other members have any dependencies on those tasks, they can tell or they can suggest that, okay, you have picked up these 4 tasks, why not you do the next one first because my task is going to be dependent on that. So that kind of moderation can be done by the team amongst themselves. The Scrum Master is responsible for removing whatever obstacles, whatever impediments the team reports, so that the team is able to make the progress. The Scrum Master also ensures that during this stand-up or the daily Scrum, everybody gives their status quickly. In fact, it is recommended that nobody should be speaking more than 15 seconds, 30 seconds. So minimum time they should be taking. The whole stand-up should not last too long. In this stand-up, chickens can participate. That means any other person from outside the team can also participate, can attend, but they cannot comment. They cannot interfere in the meeting. They cannot give direction. They cannot make suggestions and all. They can just listen to the updates. Another technique that is used for keeping the team in sync is actually what is known as the task board. I have just given a picture here. So what is happening, if you look at the left-hand side, all the stories are there. I mean, here 2 stories are seen, and depending on those 2 stories which came from the product backlog, you have in the next column to-do list. To-do list has all the tasks required to complete that story. And then from to-do list, the person who picks up those tasks, he picks up these are the stickies actually, he'll pick up one sticky and put it in the in process column. So which will tell everybody that, okay, this task is under progress as of now. And then it will move to the next column once it is done for the verification, and finally to what's done. So as the sprint progresses, the sprint backlog, which is basically in the to-do column, keeps moving towards the right-hand side in the done column. So this is also a very good visual practice, so that everybody remains informed, not only the team member, even the other stakeholders are abreast with the team's progress. Once the team has done all the tasks, so that means they are ready they have completed the story, the delivery is ready, which is potentially shippable. Now the question comes that who is going to and how it is going to be accepted. So what I didn't mention earlier is that actually the product backlog, which has all the requirements, basically is has stories in it, but with each story is not supposed to be complete without the acceptance criteria which is associated with the story. So product owner also gives the acceptance criteria for each story or for each requirement, that okay, if this requirement, you fulfill this requirement, it should be meeting these criteria. So now the time comes that team has to prove that okay, whatever they have done, it meets all the acceptance criteria. And for that purpose, the sprint review meeting is conducted. The sprint review meeting is again a time box activity in which team demonstrates that whatever has been done is meeting the acceptance criteria. This sprint review meeting is open for everybody, but basically the product owner has the onus of critically examining and accepting the stories if they are completed. So the criteria that is associated with each of the story is in brief called done criteria. So the product owner will basically see that all the stories are meeting the done criteria. For this for this demo of the stories, focus is basically, as I mentioned in the very beginning, focus is on the working software or basically on shippable delivery, which can be given to the customer, end customer. So they are not really bothered about any other artifact, any other processes involved, any other related things. So main focus is whether whatever has been completed, it can be shipped, it can be handed over to the end customer. The sprint review starts with presentation of sprint goals and product backlog, just giving the idea that what all was attempted, and finally presenting what got done. Only those stories are demoed which are done. If something is not done, it cannot be presented in the review meeting. All the stakeholders are there. They will generally look at it. They are free to comment here. They are free to give their opinion. And at times it has so happens that based on their comments and criteria, looking at the finished story, the new requirements will come up or additional requirements will come up which are related to that already delivered thing. Having completed that sprint and delivered what was committed for that sprint by the team then meets, huddles together and does a retrospective. This retrospective is very, very important for teams' future progress, teams' improvement of team's efficiency. So team has to do this, in which basically they list out that what was done well, what went well, and what could have been better. So that and then based on that introspection, team decides that what needs to be done in the next sprint so that their performance is improved. Scrum Master again facilitates this meeting. This meeting is a kind of a private meeting where team could also watch dirty linen, whatever hits and misses what they are doing that sprint. Somebody may have complained against another member, but they could have collaborated better. Somebody was lacking something could have been done in a better way by some other member, and things like that. So all those things get discussed in this sprint review, and based on this learning, they decide how to do the next sprint. If you look back now and examine this whole thing, basically the whole process is nothing but a practice of Juran's PDCA cycle. PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. So the planning was done initially when we picked up the product backlog, and we worked out the sprint backlog. Do part was there during the sprint. We did every day daily scrum was there in which we reviewed day-to-day activity, day-to-day progress, and day-to-day problems were resolved there. And then now the check has been done where we handed over the completed work to the product owner, made the delivery of the shippable product, and now the time comes for act. That before starting next sprint, we know that what is to be improved and we act upon that for starting the next sprint. Now, how these sprints are measured, how the progress is monitored during this. So it's one of the activity for the Scrum Master is that he publishes the sprint burn down chart. Now this burn down chart is actually a reverse of what otherwise we are familiar with in any of the project monitoring tracking tool. Here the chart is actually the tracks the remaining amount of work, not what has been done, but the remaining amount of work. So a sample I have put on the left-hand side in the slide. The straight line shows that if everything was done smoothly, if you look at it, there's about 90 hours. It starts at 90 on day 1 and goes down to 0 on day 10. So that means the sprint was for 10 days. There was 90 hours total effort required, and on an average, every day they were supposed to be doing 10 hours job so that they could finish this in 10 days, less than 9 hours job actually. So the 9 hours job actually, so that they could finish in 10 days. But what happens actually that every day the task that was supposed to be for 9 hours doesn't get finished in 9 hours. So initially, if you look at it, the red line shows the progress of the team. It shows that initially the team was doing much better, much faster, but after day 2 they ran into some problem, and then the day 3, day 4 progress was not that good. But eventually, so depending on whether the team is going faster or slower, this graph will go above or below that blue line, which is the standard line. So this is how the team tracks its progress. This chart shows them, keeps indicating that whether they are behind the schedule or ahead of the schedule. So, and this gives the idea that where the whole progress is going to be. Another thing related to this is the product or release burn down. So this sprint is fine, but whether we are going to meet the end goal of delivering the complete project, say 6 months down the line. So this is how that is also tracked from sprint to sprint. Now, if you look at it down the x-axis, it says iterations, which are basically sprints, and on the y-axis it shows total story points. Story points are actually, and I was talking about the estimation of the product backlog. Product backlog gets estimated again with using a rough scale of Fibonacci series, where one would say, okay, this story needs large effort, small effort, and things, or maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this kind of categorization. And each story is assigned a number depending upon the size and complexity of that story. And based on that, this is the total story points for the total complete project. So these 400 story points are being tracked on a sprint basis. So total for each sprint, it shows the progress. Like it is right now, it is showing the progress of 7 sprints. So again, like in the previous graph, we were seeing the delivery or schedule meeting on day-to-day basis. Here it is watching the schedule being met on a sprint-to-sprint basis. So this is how the progress is made, and sprint after sprint, the deliveries will be made, and finally this tracking is there. Because we did not have very rigid schedule, we know that the stories are estimated only in detail only when their commitment is there, and depending upon that, once the commitment has been done, team completes their commitment within the given time box. So at times they may have to put in extra effort, at times they may be able to do it easily. In case they are able to finish their sprint faster, they are free to take up more stories in consultation with the product owner, again on the same priority basis, and that's how the whole project progresses, and the visibility remains there, and depending upon that, the schedule is known, the predictability is there, whether the project is going to be completed in given time or not. So it takes away a lot of uncertainties that were there in the earlier techniques and methods used for the project management. This becomes much more flexible because it is driven by the team itself. So we know that we are sure that the team is going to deliver on such and such date or not, and things like that. So these are, and then actually in real life what happens that actually multiple teams work in parallel on different stories, and then they bring it together. So in that situation, what is known as we call it Scrum of Scrum is done in case, as we said, in case of a team, there's a daily stand-up, but in case of multiple teams, then each of the team's representative comes together and does the Scrum of the Scrum, because again, teams have to keep in sync with each other. So this is how the Scrum has been defined. This is how the deliveries are done in the Scrum, and it is still continuously being refined and for improvements. Larger teams are adopting Scrum due to inherent benefits. There are projects where thousands of people are working together in the same Scrum model, and mind you that the teams are not going to be, each team has to be around that 7, 8, 9 number, not large teams are working together. This practice is also being followed across the geographies where the teams are distributed. There could be team members working from different locations, although that is not the ideal situation because wherever they are, they have to get together daily for a scrum. So it is generally recommended that the team should be co-located. All the members are at the same location so that they can have a face-to-face meeting on day-to-day basis. But still the evaluation is going on. There are search for the new methods and techniques being done. As I said, the origin of the Scrum was not from the software itself, but it came from the manufacturing industry. And still new techniques are being looked and integrated with this. The examples are Kanban and Lean from manufacturing industry, which are getting now integrated with the Scrum methodology.